Tower of God is a webtoon with a complex and varied combat system, which relies on many elements of the lore that it is better to know, in order to really understand the subtlety of the fights. And if we could detail one of these elements, the Shinsu, in the previous video, it is not the only one that we have to take into account during a fight, and it is one of these other aspects that we will detail today. Hi, it's Lilian, and we meet again for a new lore video where we are going to talk about the positions. The positions designate the role assigned to a person during a fight or a testing team. Indeed, battles in the tower are mainly done in teams, and giving positions that everyone must respect makes teamwork much more efficient, because it allows not only a better organization of the team, but also to specialize the team members in the field in which they are better. Most of the positions and their names come from the battles that Jihad and his companions fought while climbing the tower, and are therefore based primarily on human versus Shinho combat strategies rather than human versus human combat, but that doesn't mean they are useless in this kind of combat. In fact, as human-on-human combat increases more than ever, whether through tests that confront regulars, or through the wars that take place in the tower, the current positions evolve accordingly. Moreover, like many things in the Tower of God lore, you will see that the positions refer to the marine vocabulary. Anyway, with SIU it's simple, either it comes from the sea or it comes from football. But anyway, the main positions are Fisherman, Scout, Spear Bearer, Light Bearer and Wave Controller, but there are also other rarer or more specific positions: Guides, Anima, Defenders and Wizards, or subcategories of Wave Controllers: Onsulsa, Dansulsa, Hwaiyomsa and Jonsulsa. I will detail each of them in the following to be as complete as possible, but keep in mind that other positions or subcategories of positions may exist and have not been revealed yet. So as usual, this video may not be accurate in a few years. Also note that a person is not limited to one position. For example, Ran is a fisherman, but he can take the spear bearer position thanks to his lightning spear techniques created by his sister Mashini. Mashini can of course also take these two positions thanks to this. There is Hats who can switch from scouting to fisherman, or Apple who is both in the scout and light bearer position. Otherwise, high rankers or people with a level like Yu Hansung are usually able to hold any position effectively, but they are mostly better in their preferred position. The extreme cases are the irregulars like Urek, Jihad, or the head of the 10 great families, where the gap between them and the others is so big that they can hold any position with perfection, even if they also remain specialized in one position, as I explained in the videos on RAO. The Fisherman position is considered to be the ultimate position in a team because it is his greatest strength. It is usually a fighter who specializes in hand-to-hand or mid-range combat. Fishermen are generally divided into two categories: real fishermen, who use real inventories to attack from mid-range, and close combat fishermen who specialize in close combat. Fishermen tend to use mostly light weapons like reels and needles, because since the density of Shinsu increases as one moves up the tower, weapons with a large surface area like swords and other flat blades are more difficult to wield. Indeed, the high density of Shinsu puts pressure on the blade, and the larger its surface, the more pressure it has. It is quite logical. It is like when you shake an object in water, or even in the air to a lesser extent. The larger the surface area of the object, the harder it is to move. The fishermen are therefore the main offensive force of a team and are usually at the center of battles. This is why this position is quite prestigious, and why the term fisherman has come to be used to designate any fighter talented and versatile enough to fight effectively in any condition. Moreover, this distinction between these two meanings is notable in Korean, as the position is called Naksikun, and the versatile fighter is called Naksikun Yul. For example, Bam can be considered a fisherman in the sense that he is a fighter with great individual abilities in a one-on-one, for example. But his position is still Wave Controller. And the fact that the most crucial and offensive position is referred to as Fisherman by SIU most likely comes from the fact that in any fight against man, the aquatic life ends in the hands of the fisherman. I will not mention all of them because there are many, but to mention the most famous ones, there is Jihad, considered the most powerful, Hunedan, Urek Mazino, Eurasia Na Jihad, Grace Mircea Luslek, Ha Yurin, Ha Yuri Jihad, Ariye Hon, Adori Jihad, Yonhana, Hajinsong, Kun Mashini Jihad, Kalavan, Ari Bright Sharon, Karaka, Cha, Evankel, Indorsi, Ran, Anak, Chang, Elaine, Ehwa, Novik, Reflejo, etc. So really people who are all very powerful at the core. We'll see some of them again later because the best fishermen are so versatile that they can easily hold other positions. The spear bearer or spear keeper, depending on the translation, is a long-range attack position whose role is roughly to snipe his opponents in order to cover the fisherman. And as the name suggests, the weapon used is in most cases a spear. In general, they are not very powerful in close combat, but they are really specialized in long-range attacks. Some can carry needles as well, in case they have to fight hand to hand, but most do not. They usually have a special inventory called pipes that is made to carry multiple spears at once, has an invisible mode like the pocket, and is known to be very heavy. Spearbearer can also attack with Shinsu spears like masheni, or other weapons suitable for long-distance fighting like bows or snipers. Overall, Spearbearer can be divided into 3 categories. The melee Spearbearer, who will fight with his spears, but in close combat, which Rak often does for example. The long-distance Spearbearer, which is a rather classic type of Spearbearer, which attacks at long distance with its spears, and which therefore perfectly corresponds to the basic description of the thrower that I just gave you. And finally a special type, the Sniper, who will attack at long distance with something else than spears, the best example being ElevenLabs in the Nest arc, who was attacking by shooting with his sniper. In terms of strategy, their main use will be to support fighters from afar by distracting the enemy, destroying equipment or infrastructure in order to decrease the enemy's offensive power, or to prevent or delay the arrival of reinforcements in the melee with the help of a scout. Finally, their secondary role is to shoot directly at a particular enemy, or at one of his weaknesses with precision, like a sniper. For all these reasons, one of the most common combinations in combat is the Fisherman, Spearbearer combination, because in addition to the support that the Spearbearer can give to the Fisherman can also expose his enemy to the Spearbearer, so that the latter can strike a fatal blow from behind. But there is also the combination of the Spearbearer and the Lightbearer, which is very effective, especially because the Lightbearer can increase the accuracy of the throws, as well as their range with the help of their lighthouses. They can indeed calculate complex trajectories and then guide the trajectory of the spear to its target, provided of course that the target is in their control zone. This was seen for example with Aguero guiding Evenkel's spear when she threw it at Kelhelm. Long-distance attacks can also be teleported using a teleportation technique with a lighthouse, as seen in the Nest arc with Aguero teleporting Lefav's ball to kill Lopobia Dokoko, or from the beginning, chapter 71 of season 1, with Kun Hachuling teleporting Kurudan's attack to crush Lopobia Ren. The Lightbearer can also slow down or block the enemy with his lighthouse so that the Spearbearer can attack him, as we saw with Elpathion and Lopobia Lefav against Evenkel. Otherwise, the most common combination of Spearbearer and Lightbearer is the one between Rak and Aguero, like in the fight against Reflejo or Dalit. Finally, we can also note the presence of a Defender, Spearbearer combination in the non-canon lore, since it was an extremely effective combination used by the duo Hendo Lok Bloodmatter, Kun Edan at the time of their ascent of the tower, which was even considered invincible. Indeed, one can imagine a strategy as simple as effective. Bloodmatter takes care of taking all the attacks and blocking the enemies, tanking as real gamers would say, with an arrow base instead of the A, while Edan takes down all the enemies one by one from a distance quietly. The most famous Spearbearer are Enryu Kun Edan, who was once considered the best Spearbearer before Enryu's arrival, Mule Love Kun Marco Asensio, Rulmon Jordan, Taro York Kun Hindluk, Lopobia Lefav, Kun Masheni Jahad, Kel Helam, Alexei Amigochaz, the red guy from Shibisu's team, Akryong, Rak, Novik, Gietang, Kunran, Horyang, and of course the one who is undoubtedly the greatest Spearbearer in the tower, Parakeol. The role of the scouts, or observers according to the translations, is to get ahead of the group to observe the environment or the enemies, to collect information, to analyze the situation, etc. They can also have the secondary role of helping the fishermen in combat. In general, scouts are lightly armed. In fact, in order to fulfill their role effectively, they must be very agile, quick and discreet, have a quick mind and be able to adapt to any kind of situation. Scouts are generally the most athletic in body type. This is a fairly dangerous position because the scout is usually the first to encounter the enemy. Also, the primary role of a scout will not be to fight, but to survive, to pass on information. So a good scout will not necessarily be the one who is very strong individually, but the one who will have the best reactions to the unexpected, who will know how to analyze the battlefield with finesse, and will be smart enough to get out of any situation. This is why Shibisu is an excellent scout, and why he forms the perfect duo with Hats, who is a combat-oriented scout, and therefore allows Shibisu to be rather calm in case of an attack. In fact, scouts are generally divided into these two categories. Those who, like Shibisu, are more focused on gathering information for the Lightbearers, or even in some cases like Apple, are themselves Lightbearers, and those who, like Hats, are more focused on close combat and whose role will be to protect the other scout, or to support the fisherman in combat. But there may be some specific cases like Rulmon, who is both a scout and a spearbearer, which can theoretically allow him to sneak up on the enemy and snipe a particular target. Scouts collect data by reading Shinsu flows and observing the environment and enemies with the help of a watcher, who will then relay the information to the Lightbearers. The The scout can also serve as a team leader, as is the case for Shibisu, especially because of his ability to have a global and very direct view of the battlefield, and because of the intelligence that all good scouts have. But generally, this role is reserved for lightbearers because of their ability to centralize information. Scouts like darkness because it allows them to move around unnoticed, and that's why techniques like Quant's blackfish that he uses in the hide and seek, which allows him to block the light emitted by the lighthouse, are common. They can also create holograms with their observers to act as decoys and trap the enemy. One of the tactics that a more offensive scout like Hats can use is to sneak up on the spear bearer or light bearer and attack them, since they are usually weak in close combat. However, this is a rather risky tactic because if the enemy spear bearer or light bearer spots it, the scout will be in danger. This is why it only works if the scout's abilities are much more advanced than those of the spear bearer or the light bearer. The most famous scouts are Quant Blitz, Hayurin, Kunhachuling, Karaka, Leroro, Ruelmon, Grandeli, Pedro, Hats, Sonwunare, Shibisu, Apple, Yomiseng, Vespa, Lopobia Alfine, Hockney, Wangnan, Yule, Kunkiseya, Angel, Huariun, Kasano, Idindan, and let's add Serena Rinnan because she's cool. The Lightbearer, whose literal translation means the one who protects the lighthouse, is a position whose role will be to use the lighthouses in his possession to obtain and centralize all useful information during a battle. He will then have to make plans and lead his team based on this information. Moreover, this role is also played outside of battle to gather information in a general way. A very effective combination is a duo between Lightbearer and Guide, because the Lightbearer then provides all the information to the Guide, and the Guide then shows him the way. However, given the rarity of guides, this combination should not be very common. The Lightbearer will often be an indispensable position in a team, as many battles take place in the dark and the Lightbearer's lights will serve as illumination. Lightbearers can also take on different roles in combat by fighting very head-on. When this is the case, their role may be to find the enemy's weakness by analyzing them, or they may have a supporting role by blocking or slowing the enemy to help the spearbearer hit them from afar, or to help the fisherman who is fighting the enemy in close combat. In general, a lighthouse bearer must have a great mastery of Shinsu in order to keep control of his lighthouses and to extend their range over the longest possible distance, in order to collect a large amount of information. Indeed, there can sometimes be 2 or 3 battlefields going on at the same time, or even more, and a good lighthouse bearer must be able to keep an eye on all of them at the same time, in order to keep an eye on the global situation of the fight, to centralize all the information, and to make sure that he always controls the battle. In fact, the control of the lighthouses is quite similar to that of the bangs for the wave controllers. Each lightbearer has a limit to the size of the lighthouse control area, as well as the number of lighthouses they can control at the same time. On top of that, the lightbearer must be intelligent, precise, resourceful, have great analytical skills and keep his cool, so that he always has solutions for every situation and know how to bounce back if a plan has failed to come up with a new one. In a word, the lightbearer is a strategist. Moreover, he must also be able to defend himself individually, because being the brain of the team, he will often be the target of opposing attacks, especially from the scouts, as I explained earlier. As for the techniques often used by the lightbearers, there is everything that is shield creation to protect themselves from attacks, blocking techniques like, for example, Enna Core, projectile guiding techniques and techniques that allow to teleport things from a lighthouse to another, as we saw with Agero, techniques that will boost weapons, or techniques that boost the Shinsu of the wave controller. All this with the help of the lighthouses. It is also thanks to all this that the lightbearer can serve as a support for almost all positions, so he is as much the brain of the team as his backbone, because it is on him that the whole team relies. SIU even said in the note of the 36th chapter of Season 1 that 1 good lighthouse carrier was more important than 2 good fishermen. Moreover, the combo of Lightbearer and Wave Controller is a very good combo, because not only the Lightbearer will be able to boost the Shinsu and therefore the attacks of the Wave Controller, but also because the support of the Lightbearer will make sure that the Wave Controller will not have any blind spot. Finally, we can note that contrary to all the other positions whose specificities can be easily compensated by brute force, the position of Lightbearer requires above all great intellectual capacity, and thus that rankers or even high rankers who are not used to this position or who are just dull like Quant won't be able to hold this position properly, whereas a regular Lightbearer like Aguero can be a major asset even in fights between high rankers, and I think we could have the demonstration of it recently. As for the known Lightbearers, the first one to be mentioned is obviously Tuperi, because even though he has never been seen and even his family has never made an appearance in 500 chapters, he is, according to the non-canon lore, the very first Lightbearer of the tower. He invented the position and with the help of the workshop made the first lighthouses. According to legend, he explained that he became a light bearer the day that heaven gave him the eyes of God. He owns an opera, the most powerful lighthouse in the tower, of which there are only 3, but he prefers to use the eyes of God, suggesting that they are even more powerful than the opera. We can also mention the other 2 owners of an opera, Flux and Jaina Repelista Jahad, although they have not been officially declared as light bearers. Otherwise there are Lero Ro, Stua Arthur, Nyono Wan, El Pathion, Fonsecal Drake, Sophia Tan, Rachel, Prince, Yo Goseng, Jiaxia, Ron May, Hayura, Pompidou, I'm just quoting him for the name, Rowan Yuya, Apple and Kunagero of course. First of all, the word wave controller has 2 meanings. It is both the name of the position and a term for anyone who has a great mastery of Shinsu. But these 2 definitions generally come back to the same thing. Note also that one should not confuse Shinsu user and wave controller. Almost all rankers as well as many regulars know how to use Shinsu, but this does not make them wave controllers. A wave controller is someone whose mastery... Finally, for the anecdote, the name Lightbearer is called Lighthouse Keeper in French. However, Lightbearer is one of the names of Lucifer in the Bible, Lucifer coming from the Latin lux, for light, and from phero, for bearer. But the literal translation of the Korean word for the position would be the one who protects the lighthouse, so the French translation is more accurate. Most wave controllers cannot control the Shinsu effectively enough to be used as a weapon on their own. Most rely on items or weapons to compensate, even among rankers. This is why it is quite rare to come across traditional wave controllers who only use the Shinsu to fight. Wave controllers are often described as the ones who lead the battle, and most of them are versatile enough to serve in other positions. In known wave controllers, there is Eurasia Blossom and Po Bido Gustang, who represent the 2 categories of wave controller, Blossom being the offensive type and Gustang being the support type. There is Beak Ryun, Lo Po Bia Ren, Yu Hansung, Yon Hana, Kurudan, Karaka, Dowon, Evankel, Su-O, Namo and Sola, Yoka, Fonsecal Lore, Fonsecal Irur, Ho, Quatro Blitz, Sachi Faker, Hon Akraptor, Akryung, Michael, Waryun, and of course Balm. We can also consider Enryu as a wave controller even if the guy is a bit out of his league in that respect. Then, there are 4 special positions that I personally classify, for simplicity, as subcategories of the wave controller position, since they depend on the manipulation of the Shinsu. These are Wansulsa, Dansulsa, Hwayomsa, and Jonsulsa. These are not really positions as such, but rather an additional role that is assigned to the fighter, since he will occupy at least one of the 5 basic positions next to it. And for information, the suffix sa means user, and sul means technique. Wansulsa refer to the fact of mastering a technique called the One, and which allows to circulate the Shinsu in a perfect circle, allowing to increase the power of a Shinsu attack using the same amount of Myun or Su, which represent, I remind you, the density and size of a bang. I refer you to the video on Shinsu for more details. Being Wansulsa does not only allow you to increase your power, but also to use protection techniques like the protection bubbles used by Urek on the floor of death, or Yu Hansung on the hidden floor. You can also create solid surfaces like Mule and Balm do with the blue plank technique, allowing them to take support and move in the air. In order to be an official Wansulsa, you have to pass a test in the Gustang Research Association, which I have already mentioned in the videos about the 10 great families and the workshop. Because of this, there are very few official Wansulsa. The known Wansulsa are Mule Love, Yu Hansung, Urek Mazino, Grandeli, and Balm. But one can imagine that people like Gustang or Light Pen, the vice director of the Research Association, are also Wansulsa because of their status. And one can imagine that anyone with a great mastery of Shinsu can use these techniques in general, so one can surely add Eurasia Blossom, Beak Ryun, etc. Then there are the Dansulsa, also called Breaker by the official French translation, which means someone who masters the Dan technique. It is a powerful technique of Shinsu manipulation, which consists in putting a big pressure of Shinsu on the opponent, in order to immobilize him or to restrict his movements, and then, with the help of a weapon, compress this Shinsu in order to completely crush the enemy. This is the technique that Kurudan used in chapter 71 of season 1 to kill Lopobia Ren, or at least one of his bodies. Although in this case it was a little more complex to understand, since to increase the pressure of the Shinsu, he hit with his hammer in the direction of Kun Hachuling's lighthouse, so that the latter teleports the shockwave that will compress the Shinsu on Lopobia Ren to crush him. The only 2 known Dansulsa are Kurudan and Yu Hansung, but as for the Wansulsa, it is easy to imagine that people with great physical strength and great mastery of Shinsu can also be Dansulsa. Then there is the Hwayomsa, which can be simply translated as flame user, and which, as its name indicates, designates a person whose Shinsu quality is fire. The mastery of this quality of Shinsu is known to be very difficult. In addition, they also seem to have the ability to strengthen their body without using Shinsu. Known users are Evankel, Quant Blitz, Quattro Blitz, Yon Hana, Yon Woon, and Yon Ewa. Of course, we can probably put in this category all the members of the Yon family and the Blitz family. And finally, there are the Jionsulsa, the electricity users, which are the people who have electricity as one of the qualities of Shinsu. People from certain special families are able to become one naturally, while others have to pass a special test. The known users are all Kun. There is Edan, of course, Masheni Jahad, Luke, Liboric, and the unknown Kun who helped Aguero by stopping the Hell Train. The only known electricity user who is not from the Kun family is Leroro, because SIU said he looked like Pikachu in appearance, and that he can do electrical attacks too. Finally, keep in mind that there are probably more subcategories of wave controller than that. For example, there must be a special name for each widespread Shinsu quality, I imagine, just as there must be other very specific Shinsu manipulation techniques giving rise to special designations. But anyway, we are done with the 5 basic positions. It is time to talk about the special positions. Anima, or trainers according to the official French translation, is a special position that designates people who can control Shinhe and other creatures in order to use them in combat or to gather information. Anima are very rare even among rankers. An Anima will usually occupy one of the 5 basic positions, but will use the specifics of their Anima abilities to hold it. Unlike many other special positions, you cannot learn to become an Anima. It requires a predisposition, an innate talent. The ability to control creatures existed long before Jahad and his companions arrived, but at some point the head of the Lopobia family acquired the ability. Not all Lopobia are Anima, but they all have the potential to become one, and some of the Lopobia family elites have Anima abilities far beyond that of standard Anima, while the chief is, according to non-canon lore, able to control all the Shinhe and animals in the tower, as well as humans. In order to transport their Shinhe and control them, the Anima use what is called a bowl, or a jar depending on the translation, which will compress the creature and make it transportable. It's exactly the same way Pokeballs work in fact. But this space can have any shape or size. We have for example the kind of jar used by Sunwunare, or the sort of sheep costume of Lopobia Ren during Season 1. But it can even be a whole room as we saw with Lopobia Alfine in the Ark of the Name Hunt Station. According to SIU, it is better if a jar is easily transportable, and the Shinsu inside is changed regularly in order to keep control over the creature. However, some creatures do not need a jar to be controlled, as is the case with Angel's Metalfish and Lopobia Elaine's Fenril. While the Anima are able to control powerful creatures that can do the dirty work for them, this is also their greatest weakness, for they become a target to kill, since if you eliminate the Anima, you don't have to worry about the Shinhe it controls. Also, since an Anima in most cases needs a jar to control its creatures, destroying it or altering the special Shinsu in it is enough to prevent the Anima from controlling them. The known Anima are mostly Lopobia. There is the head of the family who is the best Anima of the tower. Ren, Yasracha, Dokoko, Didiano, Lefav, Elaine, Alfine, Fusil, and probably Shili el-Jahad. And for those who are not Lopobia, there is Sunwunare, Angel, Kendrick Deal, Verdi, Dorian Frog, and Yu Hansung. Here it's going to be very quick because there's not much to say, but the defender position is a very rare special position, whose role is to protect the team during the fight, especially the light bearer or the spear bearer. It's the tank, and as I already said in the part about spear bearer, the spear bearer defender combo that Kun Edan did with Hendo Lock Bloodmadder was considered invincible. So the only defenders currently known are Hendo Lock Bloodmadder, who is known as the best defender in the tower and whose nickname Long Life Turtle comes partly from that, and aka Williams. Well, the guides being a rather long and complex part to explain, I decided to dedicate a whole lore video to them, especially since they are quite important elements for the plot, and I would like to talk about them in a satisfactory way, doing a lot of analysis and interpretation by the way. But to summarize quickly, the guide position is a special position, but mostly a status, since the guides will occupy one of the 5 basic positions next to it in general, and that refers to people with guide powers. These powers can be divided into 2 types. The first one is a certain form of omniscience, allowing them to know the global situation of an area, and thus to know what is the best thing to do, allowing them to guide others on the best paths, as they often say. And the second one is the ability to predict the future in a more or less precise way, over a more or less distant time. The guides have a better sense of analysis than anyone else, and usually work with the light bearer of the team, the person who centralizes and shares the information, in order to advise him or her in the best way, and to guide the whole team to the best paths, as I explained earlier. This is what Huariun does very often with Aguero. The known guides are II, Alumik Edrock, Evan Edrock, Huariun, Yuto, and Suo. There is a lot of subtlety, detail, and non-canon lore about the guides, so I really suggest you check out my video on the guides when it comes out, in order to understand them better, because I think you'll see that there's a lot of interesting theories to be made about them. I already talked about it at the end of my video on Shinsu, so I won't repeat myself. Just know that wizards, or magicians according to the translation, can be considered as a special position in the same way as guides or anima, given the singularity of their power, but it's not really official. You can take this as an interpretation on my part. Well, this long video is over. I could have developed further by analyzing some combinations or by showing examples of teams that we have already seen, or that we can assume from the non-canon lore, such as Jahad's team when they climbed the tower, in order to show the practical rather than theoretical aspect of the positions in battle. But honestly, I think the video is long enough as it is. At least you can reread Tower of God with all this in mind. Anyway, I hope you've learned or better understood some things and that you liked it. Don't hesitate to like, comment, share, etc. You can also follow me on Twitter as I talk a lot there, and we'll meet again for the next lore video, which will be about the guides.